أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. There's no God but you. Glory be unto you. Indeed, I was among the wrongdoers. وصلى اللهم على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Ameen. Thank you for joining in. Inshallah, today we will continue on with the 20th Flash on Sincerity. Hamim has posted the link up, and you can also follow along the screen. Just briefly, what we covered last week was the verses at the start of this 20th Flash on page 200. So the author shared in with us. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Verily, we sent the book down to you in truth. So worship God in sincerity, for God's is sincerely practiced religion. That is from Quran chapter 39, verse number 2. And so there was an explanation of this verse also through the saying of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. All men will perish except the scholars, and all scholars will perish except those who act in accordance with their knowledge, and all of them will perish except the sincere, and even the sincere are in great danger. And so we touched upon the meaning of the verse in light of this prophetic saying as well, because they mutually explain each other. And some of the keywords that attracted our attention from the verse was definitely sincerity, because that's the topic under discussion, and worship and religion. So we said that what is sincerity? So pretty much sincerity is really me or the human being acting in accordance to the way he or she is created. So me being true to my human nature, where I recognize that I am created as a totally needy individual. I'm bestowed everything is given to me. And so the one that gives it to me, the one that gives me my existence, is the one that I need to acknowledge and declare my recognition of him through my existence. And so acting in such a way, which is very theoretical, is really being sincere to myself. And that also includes worshiping God, as in expressing and acknowledging the one that puts me in this situation. And if I'm acting like this, then that conforms God's religion as well, because religion belongs to God only, the one that puts us in these conditions of existence. And so these were pretty much the main points from last week. And just briefly over the verse, we said that what puts anyone in danger as far as any act they're doing here, especially if I have accepted the notion that the universe must have been created by an absolute source. And so I am, then I want to connect everything that I'm doing here to this absolute source. And that's just like it's a step-by-step process with every action that we do. And so we give the example of, let's say you watch like a YouTube video on how to make something, baking a cake, and then you invite someone over and then you share that with, your friend. But then if you attribute this whole act to yourself, then you're in danger. And so, yes, I do believe that, or I'm convinced that I'm not the creator of any of the created things here. I just mixed up a bunch of ingredients and followed the order, and the result is created. But this act of kindness is mine. So it's really a matter of analyzing the whole human interaction that I have with the universe from A to Z in a very real or sincere way, as to being cognizant of what is bringing the whole cosmos into existence. So that was it in a nutshell. I'm just going to see if anyone wants to make some comments on the introduction before we move on to the first point. So if there's anyone who wants to share anything, right now is your time. Feel free to raise your hand, or you can put a comment in the chat. Okay, so it means that people are ready. We can move on to the first point. First point. An important and awesome question. Why is it that while the worldly and the neglectful and even the misguided and hypocrites cooperate without rivalry, the people of religion, the religious scholars, and those who follow the Sufi path oppose each other in rivalry, although they are people of truth and concord? Agreement belongs in reality to the people of concord, and dispute to the hypocrites. How is it that these two have changed places? So when I was reading this, I had a little hard time understanding the question in and of itself. So I'm just going to rephrase it how I understood it. So pretty much the author is introducing to us two different worldviews that we experience in this universe, one being a horizontal worldview and the other one being a vertical worldview. So the horizontal worldview just is bound to perceive existence from birth to death. And so all my transactions are just bound within this universe. So for example, I go to the store, or let's say I go to the baker and purchase bread. I give money and then I get my bread. End of deal. I'm happy to have bread, and the baker is happy to sell the bread, right? End of business. We both depart our ways. So that's a horizontal worldview. And a vertical worldview would be more geared towards like a God-centric worldview, where I'm trying to connect everything to the source of my existence and the source of existence of the universe. And so coming to that, it's like an ultimate goal, like seeking the truth. And coming to that, seeking the truth, can have various ways. So people can take various approaches to seek the truth. And so the author is asking why there are discordances or disagreements with people who are ultimately seeking the same end goal, rather than the people who have a horizontal worldview. And he's saying, shouldn't it be the opposite? Shouldn't the people who have a vertical worldview, shouldn't they just be in agreement with each other? So that's the dilemma that the author is presenting to us. Now, the answer, we will set forth 7 of the extremely numerous causes of this painful, disgraceful, and awesome situation, one that causes the zealous to weep. The first, just as dispute among the people of the truth does not arise from lack of the truth, so too the agreement prevailing among the people of neglect does not arise from any possession of truth. Rather, it is that a specific duty and particular function has been assigned to the classes in society, like the worldly, those engaged in politics, and those who have received a secular education. And thus, the functions of the various groups, societies, and communities have been defined and become distinguished from one another. Similarly, the material reward they are to receive for their functions in order to maintain a livelihood, as well as for the moral reward that consists in the attention they receive from men for the sake of their pride and ambition. This too is established and specified. So there are 2 footnotes, and let's read up those, and I'm going to try to, okay. So the first footnote says, the worldly, ahle dunya, those people whose view is restricted to the life of this world and who disregard the hereafter, are those who sell religion for this world. And the next footnote, be aware that the attention of man cannot be demanded, but only given. If it is given, one should not delight in it. If one delights in it, sincerity is lost and hypocrisy takes its place. The attention of man, if accompanied by the desire for honor and fame, the attention of man, if accompanied by the desire for honor and fame, is not a reward and a prize, but a reproach and chastisement for lack of sincerity. Such attention of man, such honor and fame, harm sincerity, the source of vitality for all good deeds. And even though they yield a slight pleasure as far as the gate of the tomb, on the other side of that gate, they take on the form of torment. One should not therefore desire the attention of man, but flee and shy away from it. Be warned, all you who worship fame and run after honor and rank. There is therefore nothing held in common to the degree that it might produce conflict, dissension, and rivalry. However evil be the path that they tread, they will be able to preserve unity and agreement. So this first paragraph seems to be describing how a horizontal worldview doesn't lead me to any sort of discordance or disagreements in my endeavors. And pretty much because I think if we take that analogy of the baker and someone buying bread from the baker, the transaction just is bound within the universe. So like a result is in a material form, even though if there may be some sort of, he mentions about ambition and pride, people taking, it's a human potentiality, and we are free to choose such attitude where I take pride for my doings. And so let's say as a baker, if I take pride in selling the bread, and then people saying, oh, your bread is wonderful, I'm going to recommend all my friends to come and buy from you. And so if I just, keep taking pride in this, that, I have a lot of customers because I sell the best bread, then, it just stays. Any sort of transaction is just very worldly. There's no like ultimate aim or purpose pertaining to my existence. And obviously my job is just to sell bread, and your job as a customer, you'll just keep buying and end of the transaction. So that's sort of like how I made sense of this first paragraph. Let's move on now to the second part. But as for the people of religion, the scholars, and those who follow the path, the duty of each is concerned with all men. Their material reward is not set and specified, and their share in social esteem and acceptance and public attention is not predetermined. Many may be candidates for the same position. Many hands may stretch out for each moral and material reward that is offered. Hence, it is that conflict and rivalry arise. Concord is changed into discord, and agreement into dispute. And and the way I sort of, made sense of this paragraph, where the author is talking about a vertical worldview, people trying to share in their understanding of existence, or basically everybody end goal is seeking the truth, the reality. How do discordance or disagreement arise, or rivalry arise? It's also based on, I think when ego comes in as well. So I remember last time when we studied this a month ago, Brother Ali sort of gave the example of, let's say if I interpret a verse, I'm going to explain it a certain way, then Asim interprets it, he explains it a certain way. But if I say, hey, my way is better than Asim's way, then I'm in danger, because, the result lies with the one that brings this universe into existence. So who am I as a created being to evaluate any of this? So I think, just being mindful of that save us from rivalry and competition. And I was also thinking about even, I guess let's move on and then we can sort of chime in. So so these are some human conditions that we can find ourselves in with the usage of free will. Now, the cure and remedy for this appalling disease is sincerity. Sincerity may be attained by preferring the worship of God to the worship of one's own soul, by causing God's pleasure to vanquish the pleasure of the soul and the ego, and thus manifesting the meaning of the verse, verily my reward is from God alone, by renouncing the material and moral reward to be had from man, and thus manifesting the meaning of the verse. Nothing is incumbent on the messenger but conveying the message, which is from Quran chapter 5, verse number 99. And the previous verse, verily my reward is from God alone, is from Quran chapter 11, verse 29. And there is a footnote as well. One should also take as one's guide the quality of preferring others to oneself, the same quality of the companions that is praised in the Quran. For example, when giving a present or performing an act of charity, one should always prefer the recipient to oneself, and without demanding or inwardly desiring any material reward for religious service, know one's act to be purely God's grace and not impose a sense of obligation on man. Nothing worldly should be sought in return for religious service, for otherwise sincerity will be lost. Men have many rights and claims, and may even deserve zakat, but it cannot be demanded. When one receives something, it cannot be said, "This is the reward for my service." Rather, in perfect contentment, one should always prefer to oneself others who are more deserving. Thus, manifesting the meaning of they prefer others to themselves through poverty, though poverty be their lot. Quran chapter 59, verse 9. They prefer others to themselves, though poverty be their lot. One may be saved from this terrible danger and gain sincerity. And by knowing that such matters as goodly acceptance and making a favorable impression in gaining the attention of men are God's concern and a favor from him, and that they play no part in conveying the message, which is one's own duty, nor are they necessary for it, nor is one charged with gaining them. By knowing this, a person will be successful in gaining sincerity, otherwise it will vanish. And this is, we'll just stop here for now to look into more depth about what was read, what was shared. And some of the questions I had, well, the general question was connecting it back to how the author started us off with the verse and the hadith on sincerity, that that religion belongs to God and God needs to be worshipped in everything. So I was wondering, how can I do this? In other words, I was wondering, how can I act in the name of my Lord? So that was a general question I had. How can I act in the name of my Lord? And to be more specific with everything that was shared, even by the author, with the different worldviews and how we can get caught up in just satisfying our egoistic desire, or even just like fame, I would say, which is prevalent as well. If we check in to see people's, like even YouTube video, I may be saying, oh, you know what, I have this many subscribers, but so-and-so has 100K. So let me just, make sure that I'm also getting that many subscribers. So how can I, change my way and get that many subscribers? So I think this whole fame part is also crucial. And I was also thinking, how can I save myself from not falling into a false aim, which has no reality? Because clearly it's easy to get caught up in it, but how can I basically save myself from not falling in danger? So I know I threw in a lot of questions, so let's tailor into one big question here, which is, how do I cause God's pleasure to conquer the pleasure of the soul? Because clearly human beings are made in a way where we love ourselves, but the author is mentioning that, hey, guess what? You want to prefer worship of God over worship of anything else. So here's a question I'll put up on the chat. How do I cause God's pleasure, to conquer the pleasure, conquer the pleasure of the soul. So please help me out if you have any thoughts on solving this problem. It's a human problem. I forgot the how. Go ahead, Suhail.
Well, to answer your question, I think the his first paragraph, I think, is important to unpack in that distinguishing truth from those who are not on the truth. And specifically, or really he calls it the people of truth and the people of neglect. And why is there discord amongst the first group and agreement amongst the second group? And that, I think, is important point to underline, because with the people of neglect, as he points out, there are already sort of pre-assigned or preordained roles. Everybody has a role to play. Everybody's playing an act, so to speak, if you think about it. I don't know how many people have read Shakespeare here, but there's a famous play he has, and one of the sort of verses he quotes is he says, when I was reminded when this was being read, he says all the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players, and that's what it appears to be amongst the people of neglect, is that everybody has an act they're playing. Those engaged in politics, those receiving secular education and teaching, and the various other sort of functions in society. And their sort of recompense or quote unquote material reward is already sort of preordained. I engage in politics, I'm going to get this position, so to speak. I'm going through school to get a certain X job. It's sort of known, more or less. So there's no competition, quote unquote, per se, in that sense. Not in the way he's talking about, in that people know this is how society works. This is how things work. So nobody actually questions it on a large enough scale. There are people in politics. There are people running for office. You are in an educational system. You are going to get a job. It's as if things are sort of laid out in front of you like a checkbox. And because you have an assigned role, in a way, there's no point of conflict, general conflict. And in some sense, the quote unquote conflict that happens, let's say there's like a revolution in society, it comes from when those roles are sort of distorted. So, for example, if it comes to the point that people can't eat, I'm a citizen of a society, and I can't eat, no matter what the politicians are doing or the rulers are doing, then there's going to be a revolt or revolution, because that role has sort of been diluted, and not, so I wouldn't say diluted, but maligned and attacked, so to speak. And then you have conflict. But generally speaking, there are established roles. So there's no general conflict. And you just have people mutually agreeing. The most important aspect of that is that there's no sort of divine presence in that sort of structure. So what pleasure you're seeking is very transient or temporary at best, if any at all. Whereas, on the other hand, with respect to the people of the truth, there is no pre-assigned or preordained duty. In a way, everybody has the same duty, so to speak. You can't, no person can absolve themselves of the truth. It's impossible. Everybody is their own sovereign agent who has to make an individual choice about what they believe in. And therefore, what you are recompensed is unknown because no one can define it for you. There's no overarching society or supervising religious class that determines your position in life and what your reward is. No one can determine that for you. Only you have only you can make the choice about what you believe in and how much you take the truth to heart and how sincere you are um, to the truth. And there's the difference I think he's trying to point out. Hence why the reward is not set or specified. There's no set specification in your esteem and acceptance and public attention. And therefore, if more than one person sort of reaches out for recognition, so to speak, because which is the opposite of sincerity, for recognition, for self-recognition of their quote unquote sort of stature in this society in terms of what they believe in, their quote unquote religiosity, then you have conflict. And then you have rivalry. Because their duty, in a way, concerns the duty of every man. Like as he says, nobody can absolve themselves of what they believe in. And so when your position concerns what people believe in, you become some sort of scholar or sheikh or whatever. Now what you have to say concerns everybody. And that's where conflict arises. Because everybody is trying to reach out for the same thing. So, and then we can, I guess, talk about it later, but the only cure for that, the only cure and remedy is sincerity. But that's, I think, the beginning part of the beginning part of answering your question. So.
Jazakallah khair. That was helpful. It does make sense in terms of how the horizontal worldview seems to have assigned rules, and I think we can all make sense of it, even in a corporate setting. The end goal of any corporation is the same, generate revenue, and everybody has different duties, roles, job titles that they're working under. And so because they're working for a corporation and the end goal is the same in terms of getting things done in a material sense within this universe, so there's no conflict. Go ahead, Asif.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for all. So the thing is, I'm going to go to the note that is there, first of all, before we go to the question. So there's he puts a note, the author, on page 200. Basically, he talks about like a specific kind of exception where he says, something that he noticed and appreciated about a particular town that he was, where there's a particular segment of a particular believing people of truth, I would say, and they're following a particular kind of following they have there, and then there's something that he noticed, there's no dispute, and something, even though there may have some differences of opinions, but there's no harmful rivalry and conflict. So that caught my attention kind of, because he thinks that is something that was praiseworthy and something that the author thinks is something that we can maybe benefit from, and how the attitude of any individual should be, like anything that maybe they're disputing, maybe truth, or even matters of truth, that is not, there's no harmful rivalry and conflict.
Why?
What do you mean why?
Well, why wasn't there any rivalry involved?
So let's read the note. Okay, note: an auspicious sign of blessed is Sparta. Some people say Medina has this vibe inside the city where every different kind of people come in, and there's no harshness, or there's no strong rivalry of people. Hey, this I am right versus you're right. It's nothing like that is going on. But so which causes one to offer thanks. So this the blessedness causes one to offer thanks. Is that compared with other places? So other places don't have, there's rivalry and conflict going on in matters of truth. So, and that's why when I noticed in the first point in the question also, when he says this is an important question, the author thinks it is very important and an awesome question. So why is that while the worldly and neglectful and even the misguided and hypocrites cooperate without rivalry? And he says the people of religion and the religious scholars, those who follow whatever path, oppose each other in rivalry. So this is something that is real. It's real. It happens. So, and which is why, what is this noise? Yeah. So which is why that in the note he says that the author says in the note that there's an exception about the city he's talking about.
Dr. Ali, your phone was on. I just turned it off. I was sorry.
It's okay. Yeah. So that's why, I mean, the author thinks that it is something that we need to look into for ourselves, which is why he says in the answer that, yeah, we will set forth extremely, 7 of the extremely numerous causes of this painful, disgraceful, and awesome situation. Because he thinks that this should not happen, all these disputes. That's why it is painful, it's disgraceful, but it is something real that everybody, should concern most of the people. But, and the examples, for example, as, the professions, everybody has a profession, and all the, like Sohail was giving the example, everybody is performing in a stage, even like as an engineer, as a doctor, as a nurse, as a teacher, as a student, everybody has their role to play. So that is, in general, that's how a society or civilization works. I mean, we all live in a particular society and civilization. I don't think anybody will be able to get out of the civilization. So even the religious people, there's an appointed imam, there's a hierarchy in the churches, there's a hierarchy even in the university areas, in the academia, and in the chaplaincy. There is a particular hierarchy that everybody follows. So there, everybody is doing a role, and that is what is the sound that's coming?
I think it's Brother Ali, your phone is on. If you can turn it off, otherwise I'm gonna mute you. Oh, you did. So you're talking about there are different roles within the society, civilization. It's unavoidable. We all are playing something.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, yeah, I am also in that society. I'm in a particular role, and that's true. Like, for example, in my role, there will be a product owner, there will be a marketing team, there will be a legal team. Yeah, so everybody is performing their role, and as for you were saying that they're all doing for the benefit of the whatever they're selling, or whatever they are, selling mostly. So just the end goal is just a very material, and mostly a material kind of role. But then everybody kind of uses it and can benefit from it. But there's something going on here also that I feel we need to talk about.
they're saying about conflict. So, I mean, I'm saying that conflict is a human thing. Everybody has ego. Even if I'm working for like a corporation, I'm bumping head with other people. There's this ego and pride that is involved as well in my dealings.
Yeah.
So
that's fine.
Okay. So the conflict may arise. Hey, corporations competing with the other one. Hey, I want to make sure that I'm the one generating more revenue. I'm the one making sure that my brand is being sold. So there'll be rivalry and competition. So how is that? Well, so there is. So I don't know what the author is saying about the other competition with people seeking that truth. There shouldn't be any such competition going on.
Okay.
No, so okay, so I don't know if I was heard, but Brother Ali, I think your microphone keeps going on and off, so I turn it off and I see Sohail, your hand is up. Go ahead, please.
I think the important distinction between the two is the people of neglect and the people of the truth. So when there are pre-assigned roles or predetermined roles, so to speak, you don't. I mean, I guess everybody can look at their own life, but speaking on my own behalf, you begin to question like who you really are. In other words, it's as if someone is doing your thinking for you, or your perception of the world is being set for you. Like there's nothing to question, in a way. And so you become neglectful, and neglectful of what? The truth, which is who you are, for what purpose you're made, and to where you're going. And when somebody comes along, let's say a prophet comes along and questions those premises, those sort of accepted notions of society and the people playing a role, their individual role within society, then you have some sort of upheaval, because now you're questioning the very foundations of an established civilization that is essentially going to make one neglectful of what their reality is. So, when, for example, a prophet comes along, typically there's conflict. Conflict in the sense that one person's bringing the truth that concerns everybody, and now everybody, the veil's being lifted, that everybody has their own choice to make. Everybody has personal responsibility. Nobody can sort of absolve themselves of determining what they believe in and what the meaning of their life is. And on the opposite end, people will say that this person's lying, or this person is making up things, or this person is self-interested, and you get some sort of upheaval. I guess in the same way, while it's not intended or not what one would expect, when two people who are talking about the truth, or trying to educate people about the truth, let's say, about who they are, because everybody is an individual agent. Everybody has an individual personality now, and everybody's making an individual choice. And what you're saying concerns everybody else's individual choice. That is when ego take really, I guess, becomes pronounced, because it's inevitable. I shouldn't say inevitable. It's human nature to say, I am right, or I am right, or I am right, because your rightness or your perception of how right you are doesn't just concern you and your role. It concerns everybody, because everybody has the same role. That's why, in a sense, if a CEO of a company makes a decision, people just sort of follow in line, because, you know, everybody knows they may not like his decision or her decision, but they're the CEO, generally speaking, and they have a role to play. They have their job. They don't want to lose their job. And this, let's say, maybe they're getting their income, but you may not really have discord there. But when it pertains to, hey, somebody's saying, this is what my life is, or this is what my life means, and maybe I'm wasting my life, or wasting um, the potentiality of my life by doing things that are neglectful, or being neglectful, that is a very different scenario. And many people um, may strive for it because of the influence you can have on people's lives. It's so dramatic, so to speak. Um, and you can have a huge impact on the masses of people in that regard, because there is no individual role. Everybody's sort of on the same quote unquote playing field, so to speak. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I understood what he's saying here. And the only way to remedy that, or the only way to sort of eliminate conflict, is to know that what, let's say, one person is saying about the truth is not for their own sake, or ideally they're not trying to do it for their own sort of benefit, material benefit, as the people neglect may do, but to do it only because it's sort of a God-given responsibility, and not in need of human recognition, but because this is the responsibility laid on man to convey the truth. Nothing more than that. Whether people accept it or don't accept it is irrelevant.
So I'm wondering now, as far as the way the author is posing the question, I mean, to me, I'm just concerned with myself, like the things that I experience, what I go through, my interactions with society, and like things around me, whatever role or hats that we all wear on a daily basis. They need to be done with a God-centric worldview, or, I mean, that's just like a general statement, but they need to be done in accordance with the way that I'm made, or with how the author initiated the verse and the hadith, where I need to be conscious that I am not the doer of anything. This is just being manifested onto me, and my responsibilities is just to acknowledge the creator of the universe, and even the one that is presenting me with this message, or helping me connect with the creator of the universe in this way, in this regard, the prophet, or anyone who's helping humanity not waste their human existence, and their duty is just to convey. So that's it. I mean, this is how I'm taking it as far as I'm concerned, because I'm just looking at my role in this universe and what I go through. So really, to be honest, I really didn't feel how and why the author is even separating two different classes of people, because at the end of the day, we are all exposed, or it's in human potentiality to want to appropriate things to themselves, or it's amusing also to entertain people around, or just have, I guess, aims for doing something just for the sake of it, or I don't know, get applauses, or so. I mean, it's within the human nature. So even regardless of what I'm doing, conflict will always arise within the human beings, because ego bumping with the other ego, there's always some sort of personal interest. So I think that's what I need to be careful of, my personal interest in anything, or like a selfish interest, or having a conceited, self-centric worldview. So that's what I need to avoid. Yeah. Go ahead, Austin.
Okay. I think we should go back to the text and see what the author is saying. The one word I think is important, the truth, how he's defining the truth. So first of all, even in the verse, it says, the religion belongs to God, and then the human responsibility is to worship God, but sincerely, with the acknowledgement. So now I'm also trying to think along with all of you here, also in this, what this first point is. And as I'm reading also he starts off basically the dispute is among the people of truth. And it's not because, he says, not because of there's no truth, but there's both of anybody who's disputing seems to be holding the truth, and that's what they want to share.
Oh.
And then the people of neglect, because there's nothing that there is about the truth that is something that is related to acknowledgement of God, or how to to practice the religion in terms of practicing what you deem to be the truth and going with it. So I like what Suhail said also about that we need to look at ourselves. That's important, and how that we look at the truth, and how when we are sharing ideas and thoughts, do we share it in a friendly way, or is there like a competition or rivalry that is going on, that hey, I can say, hey, whatever I said, that is the right way, or is it more of like the note he puts in, where even though there are like many people who are following the religious scholars, let's say in this Sparta's province, but nobody is like discussing matters which is harmful, that causes rivalry and conflict. So there is a more healthy way of sharing the truth and talking about the truth. But that's what I think the author kind of is, at least in the first principle that he puts in, that the dispute is what it happens because of the possession of truth. Like somebody said, hey, this is the truth. And I think Suhail alluded to this also, that, hey, this is my, what I'm saying is the right approach. So that is, I think, what we need to be careful about. And I think the notes, the footnotes, at least, I think they give like very straight, like principles in terms of how an individual should behave. And they kind of sound very straightforward to me. And like, yeah, hey, yeah, every religion, everybody will say that, yeah, hey, come on, and don't, worship the world, and don't be like falling into the trap of the pride and fame. Even in the many, I think, groups and organizations say, hey, don't fall into pride. This is what is unique, that at least the Quran is telling us in terms of our being, that is, bringing us to the right path of recognizing, as everybody was saying, who our Lord is, who our owner is. And that's what becomes our practicing our religion, because yeah, we need to check ourselves, I feel, in terms of the activities, whatever we are engaging in, and the sharing of the truth that we are doing. What is it that for? Does that cause anything? Hey, I did a very good presentation today, or I did a very, I hit the right points, and take pride in that, or just say that my reward lies with the one who allowed me to, gave me the ability to do that, and set the stage for me to be able to express that. So I think that's what I'm getting, at least.
Yeah, that makes sense now that you put it in this way. It's like, even applauses, like, let's say you're performing and you get applauses, but it's really how do you take in, as in what are you attributing this whole phenomenon to? Like, are you really attributing it to yourself, or are you actually attributing to the one that brings the whole universe into existence? So yeah, alhamdulillah, that makes the case wonderfully clear. Thank you. We'll just check in to see if there's anyone who wants to make any comments or has any thing that they want to share or questions. Hatija Beza, go ahead, please.
Assalamu alaikum. I am still thinking about the text and what has been discussed so far, but I wanted to share some thoughts that I have. One still being this sense of cooperation and competition, or concord and discord, that the author is making here between these two kind of groups of people, the people of neglect and the people of truth. I guess, if I find that there is discord among the people of truth, the author he's specific to start off with saying, it's not because of the lack of truth in what they're trying to do. But at the same time, it's, I guess it can be, or it is, an indication of insincerity or lack of sincerity there. And I guess the issue arises when, the quote unquote people of truth, when such, rewards or expectations, and that's maybe another topic, what is to be understood by reward, because, and reward from whom, God, and bringing it back to like Faria's question in the beginning of it, was it like seeking God's pleasure, right? That being a sort of reward, and I think that can be further discussed, but this being like in kind of adopting the format that the people of neglect already adopt, and let me just finish my sentence, that they adopt in getting a sort of reward. So it's not that there should be no reward that's expected, or a lack of reward, or that's not really the crux of the issue here, but rather, as the author makes a distinction between these two groups, that with these predetermined or preordained roles or expectations, where everything is already clear as to what should be expected, kind of applying that mold onto something that's not meant to be shaped by such a thing. So it's kind of trying to force some, like, if you want to call it, like the superficial way that society functions right now. And when I say superficial, I mean like human imposed, not necessarily there by necessity, but just the way that we function as a society. Then trying to take that mold or format and trying to apply it to something that essentially cannot be molded by it. And if I do that within my own world, and this text being very self-centric, I think, although it's talking about the people of neglect and the people of truth or whatever as if like an outside thing, it's very much I think, self-centric in the sense that, you know, I in a way, I am only responsible for myself, and I cannot really, I cannot change someone else or make them quote unquote more sincere or less sincere. It's all about the self. So, trying to impose this sort of artificial molding onto something that cannot be molded by such a thing. And so that's one thing that I think attracted my attention here, kind of like taking this already existing mold and just trying to apply it to something that cannot be shaped by it. And then secondly, as we've been discussing, the sense of cooperation and competition. Clearly, it's not cooperation or competition in the way that maybe I would have initially thought about, because with, as Freddie was saying, with the horizontal worldview, while the reward is clear, I guess it's a very much a competitive worldview, in the sense that, like, if I don't get to the bakery first, then someone else will get that bread. So I have to be there first to make sure that I'm fed, for example, or that I get whatever it is that I want, and just kind of like making sure that, in a way, my sustenance is at the expense of someone else, or vice versa, that someone else is fed at my expense. So it's not that there isn't competition from that angle, but rather a different sort of, I guess, in a way, I wonder if it can be said, so this is kind of in the form of a question as well, like cooperation, insofar as competing with one another, agreeing to compete in the way that things are done. So in having these clear, I give you $1 and you give me a loaf of bread, in having this sort of, I mean, that's just a physical transaction, but the worldview behind it also having this like cut and dry kind of, expectation. There's always an expectation, and that expectation is either met or it's not met. And I don't know how to explain this. Have just to wrap my thoughts up, just having like a clear expectation and in material worth, I guess, in material terms that can be said, this is what I expect and this is what you give me, and if you cannot, then I cannot give you the service. And cooperation then being for, or this discord, this competition between the people of truth, then stemming from, again, going back to the first point that I was highlighting about just adopting this format that's not meant to be there. If that kind of makes sense. Sorry if that confused anyone.
Jazakallah khair, Hatice Beza, for your comment. At the end of the day, I think I think we should all focus in on our personal case, and I think that's the aim and intention of the author as well. The way he started off with the verse, "Verily we send a book down to you in truth, so worship God in sincerity, for God is sincerely practice religion." So the whole sincerity part, as in being true to myself, being truthful to my endeavors as well. And all these qualities that we are exposed with within ourselves and what we see around us, competition, rivalry, dispute, disagreements, that's the human potential. And, it can be also put on a healthy side, and it may also be used for an unhealthy side. I mean, that's what makes us human. And so that's why we need to steer our focus or vision in the right direction, as in the direction that pertains to the purpose of our existence. Because I think bottom line, it's all about, like, I mean, the way the author is sort of presenting the case, but I think, you know, like by categorizing two different groups of people, but, you know, he's letting me know at least that, hey, Fariha, you can, you know, these are some traits that, you know, you may find in yourself. So check in to see if any of that apply to you. And so I think we can all answer that question to ourselves. But I think what I gathered from what you all shared is really that the reason why he brings up the people with a vertical worldview, that how can they be in danger is really, I think, as was highlighted by Asim as well. If I claim to hold the truth, I mean, that's just, I think that's a great loss if, you know, whatever endeavor I'm aiming towards, and then I claim to hold the truth, you know, that's the danger I think that the author is mentioning. So just wanted to share that. And let's see, we have Suhail, your hand is up. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think the discord he's mentioning is not discord as in I don't get what I want and that's discord. I don't know what the word he uses in Turkish or if it's Arabic or if he uses the word fitna, but in when he wrote it in original Turkish, but even if I don't get something I want in a sort of set structure, it's accepted. It's a given. I may not be happy about it, but I just take it. It's because I don't in that structure, there is no room for me to question or to think, so to speak. And if you look at society as a whole, that's what you see. There's no, I don't know if you want to use the word culture or but our idea of questioning or challenging things, challenging ideas or challenging notions, the general consensus, I would say, amongst the vast majority of people, because people accept their role and that's how they view themselves as. Whereas when it concerns the truth, the people of the truth, the role is, the only role that there is the role of being a human being. And no one is more privileged than the other. Everybody has the same position as a human being with free choice to determine how they see themselves and therefore how they see the world. And in that situation, because everybody, so to speak, can speak about the truth, whether they know what they're saying or don't know what they're saying doesn't matter. But everybody can do it. Everybody has the same equal opportunity to do so because everybody is a human being who can think and question for themselves. And when with that, in that situation, there is no predetermined sort of material reward or social esteem. There's because there's no predetermined role. It's open. And so therefore, any two people can say, I have the truth. Potentially, they can say it. Or I have some aspect of the truth in which I think my aspect is more right than somebody else's. And why that's important is because when one says that, that affects everybody else's perception about who they are. So for example, if somebody says, some scholar says, I'm going to share with you this, that's going to impact how I view myself potentially. And so social esteem can be very vast depending on how much of a mark you have. You know, because there's no predetermined role, there's no predetermined compensation. And that stems from the fact that I think I'm doing it not for the sake of the truth, not so that I can know who I am and share that with others, but for the simple sake of, let's say, material reward, material compensation, or social esteem. And when that's the case, then it becomes less about the truth and more about the self. And that is the place of conflict. Um, Whereas if two people say, I have an aspect of the truth, and this person says he has an aspect of the truth, that's fine. But each person just only has the responsibility, as he quotes in the verse, not is incumbent on the messenger, but conveying the message, simply to convey. Their responsibility is not how people view themselves, how people view them. Their responsibility is not what they're quote unquote compensated materially, let's say, so to speak. Their responsibility is a human responsibility to simply convey the message and nothing more. What happens as a result is irrelevant to them because they don't control results. They can only control, in their choice, conveying the message. They can't control the choice of others. And when one has that perspective, then conflict is eliminated because you see everybody having their own free choice, including yourself. Therefore, in some sense, everybody's free choice does not become your concern then. So you're not after their regard or esteem. You are simply concerned with conveying the message and leaving it to them, including leaving it to yourself because you have your own choice to make as well. And that's, I think, a very important aspect or a very important thing to sort of implement or practice when one is speaking about the truth, is that there's simply a point of transmission or a messenger for people, and nothing more than that. Whether people accept them or not is not one's business or concern.
Just like Allah khair, that help clarifies the case better, alhamdulillah. Yeah, I think we need to follow the prophetic practice as well. So just like the verse is mentioning, and the author is also pinpointing that just convey the message, that's one's duty. And because each one of us is responsible for their own assessment of anything, although we wanna share our ideas or something that makes sense to us, like a worldview with others, which sometimes is not taken like well. But, and obviously there's also this excitement, but at the end of the day, I have to be watchful in terms of the way anything is being presented to anyone, whether am I imposing it in such a way where I am looking to derive any sort of, what do you say, social endorsements, rather than just sharing in the truth. So I don't know, your hand is up, Sohail. You want to say something?
No, I guess I'll have one more thing in that in the ideal scenario, I think maybe Austin was alluding to this, is in that two people share their perspectives, and the ideal is that people learn or take from each other. That is, I guess, being in agreement and like mutual cooperation with each other, rather than discord and rivalry. Because when one has discord and rivalry, then it becomes less about the truth and more about the self, and so sincerity is lost, and maybe potentially eventually the truth is lost too, which was what the whole point of it the whole point of you sharing something to begin with was.
Alhamdulillah. Anyone else wants to make a comment or express something out? Yeah, this helps at least. Helps me, alhamdulillah, clarify the case better because, because everything starts within oneself. And the author also mentions it in other parts of his writings that how human beings love themselves. And I mean, it's good, but then the author is saying that I want to prefer worship of God over anything. And I was like thinking to myself, like, what should I love first, me or my creator? Because through me, I get to know the source of my existence. But I think obviously the author is walking us through in terms of how to approach things in a way where it's more in alignment with acknowledging the source of one's existence. Yeah. I mean, this is a rough one, at least for me. Why rough one?
Yeah. Just being who the human being is. That's who we are.
Who we are. So we fall into all these sort of acquiring fame and.
Yeah, these are artificial. What are you gonna do? What am I gonna do with fame? It's just gonna be here, left here in this world. So that's why I think that's why even the attention that it's all made up, the Facebook likes and the Instagram likes are all made up. It doesn't serve any human purpose.
Yeah.
I think that's what we are all studying here.
No, but if we're talking about also matter of truth, I think it goes on with anything. Like even sometimes you get very excited. This is what the truth is. I want to share this with you. Here it is. And so within that whole act, one may lose themselves in, oh man, these people are not getting it. So I think that's where I have to keep checking myself.
That's where the verse guides us, right? It says, the duty of the messenger is only to convey the message, and then the wordings from Nursi afterwards says that hey, I should not be concerned once I give the message. Basically, I should not be expecting a reward of any kind. My duty is that's it. As a human being, as Suhail was also explaining, I think that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, right? I get it. Thank you. But I was also wondering, what comes first to you? You are the creator.
You should know that. I think you know that. As a dependent being, created being, what do you need? Who comes first?
Okay, that's a good one. Okay. No, because I get to know the source of my existence through my existence, right?
Yeah, but how do you explain your existence? Where does it come in? What is the absolute being that is needed? Isn't there? How do we explain the existence of our existence?
So
do we exist by ourselves?
Oh yeah, you're right. Okay, alhamdulillah,
So
that's great. Yeah, that's true. All right, wonderful. Alhamdulillah. Does anyone has any comments or questions? Khadija Beza, go ahead.
This is more of like a sub-thought, but I was trying to find this place, and I couldn't find the correct context for it. But in another place, Norsi talks about how like it is okay for me to say my way is the best way to the truth, for example, as an individual claim, but I cannot say my way is the only way, or that others' ways are incorrect, because it wouldn't be I wouldn't call this path my path if I didn't think it to be the best path. So what is this? How is this related to what we've been talking about? I don't know. I was thinking about, like, I guess with this aspect of sincerity and how the people of truth may find themselves in discord, then because the reward is not explicitly determined or predetermined, or there's no assigned roles and everyone kind of shares the same individual responsibility, that in ways is of everyone's concern, I guess. Although I have to check myself first and foremost, the responsibility is not one that, my responsibility is one that, if I have, or if someone is seeking the truth, I think in relation to another class we had, and I see them, then, it is my responsibility to also share any truth that I may have as well, as far as, how to connect to your source of existence. So that's just one thought that I had, which is more of a sub thought and not necessarily, I think, totally related to the core of the issue. But yeah.
Thank you for sharing your sub thought. It's very interesting. So I think at the end of the day, like, I'm just going to share out my takeaways, is that the author and even the Quranic teaching is like providing us guidance in terms of not falling into claiming ownership of anything. And I think even I was also thinking, like this attitude of, hey, it's my way or the highway, or my way, whatever I'm saying, that's the best way. I think that's what we need to avoid, because then there's some grains or traces of pride or self-centeredness or appropriating things to myself. Rather, I think what the Quranic teaching offers, and this connects with Monday's halakha with Dr. Ali on chapter about 7, we were studying the verse that said that, we have to be open-minded in terms of listening to others and expressing our ideas without having this kind of any kind of resentment or claim that, okay, that no, whatever I think is the best, or it is it. Because the moment I get into that attitude, this is it. I stop with anything I'm doing. So I think in order to progress spiritually and train the spirit, I think we have to be watchful of, being open to listening to others' view and try to assess with the view I have. And at the same time, whatever makes sense to me, that's it. It makes sense to me. It doesn't mean that that is the best way. No. For me at this moment, perhaps for me at this moment, and that's why I'm following it. So I don't know if that answer helped out answer any of your question, but your sub thought helped me, sort of express out what I understood this past week. Inshallah. Alrighty, does anyone else wants to make a comment, share something? Miriam, Ostomer, you're there, so quiet. Let's hear from you if you have some notes.
I do.
That's great. So let's hear from you, because I think we can all get some Kool-Aid right now. So please share those with us.
Okay. So my notes for the first point were, sincerity is preferring the worship of God than the worship of the soul. One should always prefer the recipient to himself. How do I cause God's pleasure to conquer the pleasure of the soul? All the world is a play. This was a quote from Shakespeare. Being kind is always the best way to share your thoughts. Don't show off. Whatever good you do or talent you have belongs to Him. There are two groups of people of neglect and people of truth. Everybody's free choice is not your concern. Everything starts with oneself. And that was my last note.
Jazakallah khair, Maryam. Mashallah, excellent. We have lots of applauses. We're applauding here as well. Yeah, I think that covers the gist of the matter in a nutshell. Okay, so if there are no more comments or questions from anyone, inshallah, we can stop here for today. And next week, we can pick up from the second cause. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. Glory be unto you. We have no knowledge save except that which you've taught us. Indeed, you're all knowledgeable, all wise. وآخر دعواهم الحمد لله رب العالمين بحرمة سر سورة الفاتحة آمين.